What if I told you that the next chapter of the war in Ukraine could be written by the very nations that have been supporting from the sidelines? After over 1,000 days of brutal conflict, the war in Ukraine is taking new, unexpected turns. France and the UK, two major players, could soon step in directly. But what does this mean for Europe and for the world? The possibility has been whispered in corridors of power for months, but now it's becoming a real conversation. But the question is, could this be the turning point in the war? How could this change everything, and what risks are lurking just around the corner? Let's break it down. The Ukraine war enters its third year, and global attention remains fixed on it. The conflict has lasted over 1,000 days, causing significant damage to the country. During this period, worldwide backing has played a key role. Nations across the globe have provided weapons, resources, and money to support Ukraine's defense against Russia's attack. But now, something big is on the horizon. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and French President Emmanuel Macron have been in talks about something that could dramatically shift the situation on the ground. Zelenskyy revealed in a recent post that discussions are ongoing between Kiev and Paris about potentially deploying French troops to Ukraine. While the idea of sending combat troops is still off the table, Macron has suggested that French soldiers could serve in critical roles to help support Ukraine. These roles might include training Ukrainian soldiers, serving as peacekeepers to help enforce ceasefire agreements, or even securing specific regions like the borders with Belarus and Transnistria. This would free up Ukrainian forces to focus on frontline combat, where they're needed the most. So, what exactly is Macron proposing? Well, his idea is to send French troops to Ukraine, but not in combat positions. Instead, these forces could play a crucial role in helping Ukraine secure its future, without directly engaging in the war. Macron has suggested that French soldiers could focus on training Ukrainian troops, helping to build their strength and capabilities for the long haul. Another key role would be serving as peacekeepers, stepping in to help maintain any ceasefire agreements that might be reached, something vital in a conflict that has seen little peace. However, Macron's idea isn't without controversy. The French president has framed this as a move to keep things in what he calls strategic ambiguity. He wants to avoid pushing France or NATO directly into a belligerent position, but the proposal has sparked heated debates at home and within NATO itself. While some countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, are on board with a stronger, more direct involvement, others like the US, Germany, and the UK are cautious, worried about the risks of escalating the situation even further. So, what does all of this mean for the war on a larger scale? Could the idea of sending NATO troops into Ukraine signal a step closer to direct involvement by the West? The truth is, this move would be a game changer. NATO troops on the ground could significantly alter how the war is fought, potentially providing a massive boost to Ukraine's defenses against Russian forces. With French and possibly UK forces helping train soldiers, secure borders, and enforce peace agreements, Ukraine could see a shift in how it navigates the battlefield. However, this proposal has the potential to drastically change the dynamics of the conflict, especially in relation to NATO's role. The alliance, historically cautious about direct involvement, is already divided. While Eastern European NATO countries such as Poland and the Baltic states have long advocated for a more assertive stance against Russia, larger Western nations like the US, Germany, and the UK are hesitant to send troops. Their concern is that any move could risk triggering a direct war with Russia, leading to an all-out global conflict. This internal division within NATO creates a high-stakes situation. As some push for greater involvement, others fear escalating the conflict into a full-scale war. Could the strategic interests of these countries align, or will this rift deepen, further complicating the international response? You can bet Russia has been closely watching these developments. Russian officials have made it clear, any NATO troops on Ukrainian soil will not go unchallenged. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov responded to Macron's suggestion with a chilling warning, stating that no instructor involved in training the Ukrainian military has immunity. In other words, whether they are French, British, or any other NATO force, they would not be exempt from Russia's wrath. The presence of NATO or allied troops in Ukraine could provoke a strong and aggressive response from Moscow. Russia has already been accused of escalating tensions through hybrid warfare tactics, including cyber attacks, and the stakes would be higher with foreign troops involved. Moscow could very well retaliate through cyber attacks or even intensify its military campaigns, pushing Ukraine and its allies to the brink. This is the kind of situation where the smallest misstep could spark a chain reaction, and the consequences would not just affect Ukraine, but the entire region. Could we be looking at the beginning of a broader European conflict? With so much at stake, what are the risks if France and the UK move forward with deploying troops in Ukraine? Could this escalate into a direct NATO-Russia conflict? The possibility of full-scale war is certainly on the table. If NATO soldiers, especially from powerful countries like France or the UK, are directly engaged in combat, it could trigger Russia to push harder, potentially leading to a direct confrontation between nuclear powers. The risks don't stop there. Russia may return with unknown cyber attacks against European infrastructure and could extend hostilities outside Ukraine's borders. Russia has used cyber warfare in Ukraine, and NATO forces would make this threat even more dangerous. The West faces a choice between further escalation and facing additional unexpected results. On a global scale, the fallout could shift the entire security landscape. When France and the UK send troops to Ukraine, how will NATO allies see NATO's promise to protect members? Does placing forces in Ukraine show NATO's power or reveals NATO's need to act urgently? What would other nations, particularly in Asia and the Middle East, think about these actions? As we stand on the precipice of potential escalation, one thing is clear. Every choice made in this situation affects Ukraine and creates global impact. Let's take a closer look at how this possible choice might affect France and the UK at home. In France, Macron's idea to send troops has caused a big political uproar. Marine Le Pen, who leads the far right, has spoken out against it. She claims Macron is taking risks with French lives. She thinks sending troops could get France more involved in a fight it should avoid. On the other hand, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far-left leader, sees the plan as careless. He warns it could make France a direct part of the war. This move, he says, could cause problems both at home and abroad. In the UK, the government has been more careful. British officials don't want to send troops to Ukraine, even though they keep helping with weapons and training. The UK is scared to get more involved in the fighting. They worry about making Russia angry and putting too much stress on their military. This push and pull between being tired of war and worrying about keeping the country safe has become a big deal in both countries' politics. As public opinion turns increasingly skeptical of prolonged involvement, governments will have to balance between protecting national interests and maintaining international commitments. So, where does this leave Ukraine and NATO? Could we see other NATO members following France and the UK's lead? It's possible, but not guaranteed. Some nations in NATO's eastern bloc, like Poland and the Baltic states, have been pushing for more assertive action, including greater troop deployments, but others, such as the US, Germany, and the Netherlands, are far more cautious, fearing escalation and broader conflict. If more NATO countries follow suit, the war in Ukraine could see a dramatic shift. French and UK troops, alongside other NATO forces, could provide crucial support to Ukraine, potentially changing the trajectory of the war. With well-trained and equipped forces helping Ukraine secure its borders and maintain ceasefires, could this mark the beginning of the end for Russian advances in Ukraine? But this also creates an opportunity for NATO to get more involved, which makes us wonder, if NATO steps up its role, how will this affect Ukraine's chances for peace? Will this move bring Ukraine closer to ending the conflict, or force both sides into a deadlock that drags out the war even more? I think we're on the brink of a moment that could change the game in this war. If France and the UK send in troops, it might reshape how the war unfolds, change NATO's part in it, and shake up the power balance within the alliance and around the world. But with so much up in the air, we still have to ask, if NATO takes that next step, what will happen to who holds the power in Ukraine and across the globe? What do you think? Should NATO take that next step, or is this a risk too great to take? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below.